I've never knocked on my own door before.
This is where Laurie Mulvaney spent his childhood.
Well, this place has changed.
This house is now the Gilbert Park Resource Center, but in 1963, this place was home. Mulvaney lived here with his parents and 6 siblings.
We were the first people to move into this neighborhood. I think we were the first people in public housing. My father worked for the Department of National Defense. I had 6 siblings, and a family of 9 gets a little weighty on one check, right?
The walk down memory lane was an emotional one for Mulvaney.
They put me on the counter. Sorry.
He remembers nearly dying in this kitchen after getting whooping cough as a child. The memory is a difficult one, but overall, he loved living here.
The first few years were like paradise. It was like everybody knew each other, everybody interacted. If somebody needed to be found, all you'd have to do is put out the word, that kid would be running home in 5 minutes,
Housing was in short supply in the 1960s, let alone affordable apartments, so the province decided to create the first public housing complex in Manitoba. Gilbert Park is a 254-unit complex that houses over 1,000 people. Before public housing, this historian says low-income earners were forced to live in unregulated rooming houses.
And if they can't afford to buy decent market housing, what they do is they live in places that are unsafe. They cut back on what they feed their kids. They take in boarders. They're cramped. It's unhealthy situations that arise.
Doug Smith says Manitoba was one of the last provinces to take advantage of federal funding to build social housing units, but eventually did in the 1960s. By the 1970s, the cost of social housing was split between the feds and the provinces. In that decade, 11,187 units were built in Manitoba, the largest expansion in social housing the province had ever seen, and the largest to date. Things have slowed down since then. A CBC analysis found that in the last 7 years, only 287 new social housing units were created in Manitoba. At the same time, 374 units were sold to the private sector. Patricia Cook and her 3 kids moved into Gilbert Park in the 1980s.
You used to be able to leave your doors unlocked. That's how good it was in here. Now, no, it's not safe. You can't even walk around here at night without somebody wanting to knock your teeth out. That's how bad it is.
According to Manitoba Housing Calls from January 2020 to October 2023, almost 50,000 calls were made to security. Over 8,000 of those calls were made in the Gilbert Park area. The province is promising to work with the federal government and nonprofit organizations to protect the existing social housing units in Manitoba at a time when affordability and housing are issues.
He put a tire down on the ground around it.
While Gilbert Park has changed, Laurie Mulvaney remembers this place fondly.
But he planted this here in 1963.
His father planted this tree in the 1960s, and it's still here today. That gives him hope this neighborhood could become a community again, like it used to be. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Winnipeg.